Can you hear me, Stephanie? Stephanie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, super. Okay, I'll just go to muted.
Yeah, it's just came on now. And there's Ray. Ray, man. Ray's there.
Hey, Ray.
We got a little feedback. Ray, hit unmute. You got to hit unmute on the bottom left-hand corner.
His audio hasn't come up yet.
Okay, we're getting.
Good morning.
You guys are showing up.
I'm full of crap, Kate. I'm on, yes, I see. I'm kidding. I just wondered if you would believe it. It would be interesting to know how many are.
Just a reminder to please put your microphones on mute if you're not currently speaking. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll put it on mute now.
Ray, you have a beard. Yeah, that's not good.
Ray, that's what we're gonna have to hit, because it's great for Stephanie, but not for us.
What's that?
Mayor Herron, how many are in council chambers?
Sorry, just Ken and I.
I could be there in 15 minutes.
No, it's okay. We're discouraging it.
Okay,
Oh, I came because,
That's the problem.
yeah, that's, we're getting feedback on that.
I can come down there, like you said, if you need.
No, dude, stay home.
Are you and Ken practicing social distancing?
Yeah,
Hey, listen, I made him wear a shirt at least. He wasn't wearing a shirt 10 minutes ago.
Okay, I have 2 more minutes and I'm waiting for Councillor Hanson.
Kathy, that's really echoey. Is that because there's multiple people in chambers?
Yeah, it's because they've got the podium on and I don't know why we need that. Okay, is that better? I'm hearing it over here now. We have headsets, right? Okay. Yeah, they're gonna bring headsets too. If you use it, yeah. Yeah, so I can hear you over there. Right.
I could do what I can do too, if I could go into.
You're using this one?
Let's put in some regular audio.
This is Ken Mackay broadcasting.
Wes, your studio looks almost as fancy as Aaron's.
This is just the office in the house. It's an old bedroom that we sort of changed into the office.
That's great.
Thank you.
I'm just hanging out in Aaron's studio because this is the only private place.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so the mic works. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Gordon. How about you?
I can hear you in stereo.
I mean, test yours.
Test, test.
Okay, I think it's a little bit after 12. I don't know where Councillor Hanson is. She said she would be here.
She's on the wrong way.
Oh, there she is, just coming in now. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. Attendance at the start of the meeting is everyone. Is that right? 6, yep. Natalie, why are you just your picture and not your video?
Is Sheena here?
Natalie?
Want me to get
Natalie,
down?
are you there?
Sorry, were you talking to me? I just had to switch my internet connection. Here we go.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're all here. I did talk to David a little bit before this meeting started, and I'm going to be ruling a point of order right at the beginning of this meeting to suspend sections 32.1 to 32.8 of our procedure bylaw, which essentially is the section that deals with public presentations. Public presentations are not on our agenda today, and we will not be entertaining them today for just one particular meeting for reasons that are quite obvious. I don't even know how public would participate in this one. So unless anyone has any problem with that, I'm going to move forward. Kevin asked me to do a couple of shout outs before we started this meeting. So one of them, of course, goes to the Gazette. On Friday, we had a few issues and not misunderstandings, some decision making on how we were going to run this meeting, because the government of Alberta is requiring that we have a physical space to allow people to observe. But I can tell all of you that are not here, there's not a single person in the gallery, not even the Gazette is here today, so that's good. But we were racing around trying to get this published in the Gazette Friday afternoon, and they actually stopped the presses for us until we had the wording right. So thank you to the Gazette for helping out there. And also Kevin asked me to give a shout out to Ernst & Young. I don't know if everyone was copied on some emails last week, but Alan who had been working on the transit file offered Ernst & Young's assistance. So they're going to be volunteering quite a bit of time, and I'm stressing the volunteer part of that, to help with some communications and finance to start. And then if it continues, then we will offer them some compensation. But thank you so much to Ernst & Young for stepping up when we are in need. So adoption of the agenda, I'm going to ask for a member of council. Now, so we're doing this differently. If you can, I'm just going to ask you to put your hand in front of your face, your screen, so I can acknowledge you. Councillor Jolly, go ahead. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. And then the same thing with voting. We're all just going to put our hands up. So in favor? That is unanimous. Okay. Next on our agenda is 3.1, Recreation, Parks and Cultural Facilities. Mr. Hiltz, are you doing a presentation?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the purpose of this report is to provide council with information on the recommended postponements, cancellation, or closures of recreation, parks, and cultural facilities, programs and events, as well as recommendations on parks and grants in response to COVID-19. Administration has provided recommendations on further closures, postponements, and cancellations of city and partner operated facilities, programs, events, and grants. Parks, trails, and playground service levels may vary in accordance with currently approved standards, however, will be maintained to safe operating condition. This will also give the city the opportunity to do yearly facility maintenance without having to hopefully do a reclosure this fall.
Kathy, would you be able to mute yourself so we can hear Carrie? Sorry.
You are.
Okay. We've also
Just so you know,
recently-
David's getting a microphone too, so we're going to limit the feedback in chambers. Sorry, Carrie.
This also, we've also just learned that most of the communities in the Capital Regional, in the Capital Region have suspended their recreation facilities indefinitely until COVID-19 till the province gives clearance of opening. So I'll leave it to questions. There are a series of recommendations, and each one of those recommendations are specific to the program or service or grant that is being proposed. Thank you.
You were muted.
I just had a question.
You know what, you guys, I'm going to keep myself unmuted because I'll forget. So I apologize. If it's getting to be confusing, let me know, but I'm going to keep myself unmuted. Councillor Watkins, you're first, and then Councillor McKay, I'll come to you, but keep it on mute for now.
Did you say until further notice? So when will what will determine what further notice is? Is that some notice from the Provincial Health Organization that says it's safe to open these things again?
Yes, we're going after, we're taking our direction from the province. So that is either from Health Services or from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. And they're providing us guidance on these. So we're proposing the closure till May 31st of 2020. And that will be determined if it's allowed to be open sooner. We'll try to meet those guidelines. But however, if it's extended beyond that, we do have a recommendation to be able to go beyond the May 31st date.
And just once again, the May 31st date, is that a recommendation of Alberta Health Services?
That was just giving us the opportunity because so far the messaging from the Premier and from the medical director for the province is that they basically are stating that this is going to be going into late May or early June. So that was an arbitrary date that administration picked. However, as I did indicate in my presentation, other communities in the Capital Region have gone with indefinite.
And then the last question is, you said we would be doing some maintenance in the meantime to take advantage of the downturn here, or the closures?
You'd cut off.
I can't hear that.
Just repeat your question.
I said, did you indicate that during the closure, we'll be doing the routine maintenance instead of doing it later in the year and having to close the facility?
That is our intent, based on availability of contractors and being able to meet those public social distancing requirements, and that the contractors who brought in will also meet the health standards that are set under the COVID-19 conditions. If those things can be done, we would be looking at trying to get all of this maintenance done now.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions, Madam Mayor.
All right, I think Councillor McKay, did you have questions? Okay, go ahead.
I just have one. Thanks, Councillor Watkins. You asked some of them. In relation to some of our recreation facilities that are closed, that might involve partnerships with other athletic groups such as football or pickleball. Have we reached out to them yet and gotten and provided them with our opportunity for feedback?
Our recreation and parks team have been in constant conversations with our partners, and that also includes on the cultural side as well.
Thanks. That's all my questions for right now.
Okay, so I had a couple questions mostly about recommendations D and E, which were counseling programs that are essentially starting beyond May 31st. So is that something that we need to do today, or can we reconsider that on May 1st? Or is it because you don't want to take bookings? What was the reasoning on those two cancellations of a full session of programs?
The cancellation of the programmings, thank you for the question, Council, is that the cancellation of the programs is because of the series, is that when you register for some of the programs, you'll be registering for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, etc. It also just makes it a lot cleaner in terms of our programming cycles to be able to then restart with the summer programs. However, as indicated before, if we're allowed to operate sooner than this, we'll be able to potentially do some salvaging with our spring sessions, especially some of the ones towards the later part. But it was just basically, we would not be able to really run anything for the month of June, given the uptake of programs that we'd have to do with instructors, getting the facilities operational, and the recovery.
Okay, Councillor Hanson, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I just need to get back to my package here. So when I look at the recommendations, I see some different dates, May 31st. I guess some of these are specific to certain programs that start March 30th, June 20th. I just, for the sake of the public, want to make sure that we are consistent with our dates, the best that we can be, so that they've got one date in mind that we're working towards, and then if that needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. I had questions about like Skybox, Active Physio, Starbucks, etc. All of those at Service Place. What did we decide on those?
Active Physio is still there, but I don't know about the other businesses.
Yes, the other businesses would be closed right now as there's no traffic in those buildings. Active Physio is open as they're meeting provincial health regulations and standards in response to COVID-19.
Okay. And in terms of our playgrounds, we're making recommendations that people stay away, or if they do use it, they use hand sanitizer when they get there, they leave with hand sanitizer and get home and wash their hands. Is that correct?
That is correct. Right now is that the messaging is we're discouraging people to use. However, if they do decide to use, that they do use hand sanitizers before and after, and just to practice safe social distancing from each other.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Recommendation 1J talks about any cancellations or postponement listed in clauses A through I, the ones above it, that is modified by the CAO acting on the advice of the Direction of Health Services. So we can make these motions and then Mr. Scoble can then modify them? I don't quite understand that.
Yes, that's what we were, the intent of that motion is that if Alberta Health Services or Emergency Management Agency or basically through a SOL is declared, is that that would give the CAO the opportunity if we have to extend them past the March 31st date. I mean, sorry, the May 31st date.
Okay, so one more time, Mr. Hilt. So what are the conditions that would take away the powers of council to extend these dates? Alberta Health, the state of local emergency, and then you said one more, I think.
Alberta Emergency Management Agency, if they basically said facilities must be maintained closed.
Okay, so as long as we're clear, it's just those three, then yeah. Any other questions from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Jolly. And
thank you. My question is about the recommendation 1B, all business leaseholders within indoor rec facilities remain closed until May 31st. So right now we're already making an exception for active communities, I believe, but I mean, that's changing. I guess, is there a problem with that motion as it's worded? Because that includes active
physio, you mean?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Council. Is that we could modify the motion to include with the exception of active physio or until public health directs otherwise.
I think that's probably a good addition. And Ledge maybe could just squiggle that in. Councillor Mackay.
Mine goes to number 6. I'm just curious.
Yeah, me too.
Do we know So that additional 11,300, that's the same that we provided them initially, or is that in addition to? And then I have a follow-up question.
That is, thank you for the question through to council, is that's in addition to the funding that we had provided them. It's to allow for the virtual counseling services and phone calls to continue. None of the activities of Sidekick is going on right now. And so I believe through conversation, Civic has agreed to continue with dealing with the youth that are involved in that program, but they do need a bit of funding to maintain that.
Okay, so if this, I guess that answers my question, because I was wondering about the actual mentoring activities. But does this pose a problem with CIBC and the end of their business or end of their programming?
Sorry about that. Having trouble with my mic button. Thank you for the question there. For clarification, it's to allow them, and I believe that these conversations have been going on with Civic because we have not agreed on another provider of that Sidekick mentoring program. We do have 2 interesting providers, but during the transition period, some of those kids will require the services to continue. So that's where we're sitting right now.
All right, I don't have any follow-up.
All right, Councillor Broadhead, do you have any questions? Just want to make sure I'm getting everyone.
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? All right, seeing no questions, no hands waving. Councillor Hughes, I can't see you anymore. Do you have any final questions? Okay. All right, is there a member of council wanting to make all of these motions, some of these motions? I always count on you, Councillor Jolly, go ahead.
I just don't want it to be Councillor Mackay, because the sound quality is not great in that room.
Okay.
sorry, Ken. So that the following cancellations and postponements be approved. Indoor municipally operated and partner operated recreation and cultural facilities that are currently closed remain closed until May 31, 2020. All business leaseholders within indoor recreation facilities that are currently closed remain closed until May 31, 2020, with the exception of Active Physio. All recreation and cultural facility bookings are canceled until May 31, 2020 in alignment with facility closures. The Recreation, Fitness and Aquatic Spring Program session, March 30th to June 28, 2020 is canceled. The Culture Spring Program session, March 30 to June 20, 2020 is canceled. All community and city-led events are canceled until May 31, 2020. The following city-operated outdoor seasonal recreation facilities are closed until May 31. Fowler Athletic Park, Larry, oh my goodness.
Alexiak.
Field, tennis courts, pickleball courts, skateboard park, Woodlands Water Play Park, Grosvenor Outdoor Pool, sports fields, ball diamonds, and picnic shelters, pavilions. The following community partner operated outdoor seasonal facilities are closed until May 31. St. Albert BMX Association, Mission Tennis Club, St. Albert Men's Slow Pitch Association, Bless Programming at the Log Cabin, Heritage Sites in Grain Elevator Park. The following business leaseholders in outside recreation facilities are required to close until May 31. Punky Potatoes at the Larry Oxlack Field, Splash Pad at Woodlands Water Play Park and Grosvenor Outdoor Pool. Any cancellation or postponement listed in clauses A through I above that is modified by the CAO acting on the advice or direction of Alberta Health Services, the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, or the city's Director of Emergency Management. And that parks, trails, boat docks, and playgrounds remain accessible to the public for spontaneous use with social distancing practices in place unless otherwise directed by Alberta Health Services, Alberta Emergency Management Agency, or the city's Director of Emergency Management. That the spring grant application deadlines be extended until April 25, 2020 for Community Capital Grant, Community Events Grant, Athlete and Artist Development Grant programs. that the spring grant application for the Young Artist Legacy Awards be extended to May 14, 2020, that the Poet Laureate proclamation be postponed to a suitable council meeting in May 2020, that additional bridge funding in the amount of $11,000 and $11,300 to CIBC be approved to support the operation of Sidekicks mentoring program until a new grant agreement is executed with another successful organization.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you want any opening comments?
Just thanks to administration for getting this together so quickly. I know we were getting emails from Ledge Services. I don't even know what time yesterday. The way the staff has really come together to provide us some great advice has been really appreciated. This is really tough for a community to see all of these programs and facilities close that are really important to our community. I think it's important at this time to make sure that the safety of both the public and our staff is kept top of mind. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other members of council want to contribute to debate? I'm seeing none. All right. I'll echo the thank you as well. I think this is difficult, yet quite imperative. I'm glad we've actually put end dates on some of these things instead of the indefiniteness of that other municipalities have done. And so we can continue to revisit these decisions. But I do believe we need to act fast and quickly in order.
Kathy, you just muted yourself.
Cool. I don't know how I did that. Anyway, I think you guys get the gist. I'm going to call for the vote by raise of hands. That is, Ray, you were good? Unanimous. Okay. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the utility bills discussion. And Mr. Lake, are you, no, we're doing, Brenda, are you doing a presentation?
Yes, I can give you a little bit of background if you'd like that.
That'd be good, thanks.
Okay, great. So I'm here to give you, present the options for deferral of the utility bills. I do want to mention in the background and discussion, we had actually mentioned 3 options, but there really only are 2 options. So the first one I'm going to speak to is the one that we do prefer. And this would be to continue to bill monthly for the next 3 months. So that would be March, April, and May, and to not charge any penalties or transfer to taxes for non or partial payments. So those who are willing and able can continue to pay their utility bills in full, and all utility accounts would continue to receive their monthly utility bills. We would ask customers to contact us to stop pre-authorized withdrawals if they cannot pay in full. So again, no penalty or transfer to taxes for the following 6 months, June to November. The main benefit of this method is there's no changes needed to our software program, and we would continue to receive some cash flow for those residents that can still pay. We would have significant communication out to the residents so that they are aware there is no penalty for non-payment. And the second option that I will present is we do not produce any utility bills for the following 3 months, again, March, April, and May, and would recover these costs by distributing the 3 months of utility charges over the 6-month period. So that would be June to November. So those charges, we could either bill the 3 months at the start of the 6-month period or prorate them out over the 6-month period. So again, no penalties or transfer to taxes for the 6-month payment period. The main drawback to this option is that we need our software program provider to help us with programming changes. And this could cost anywhere from, $10,000 to $20,000. We're not actually sure because we haven't contacted them yet, but previous changes have been significant. And we're not even sure of their availability to be able to do this change. Again, this option isn't ideal either from a cash flow perspective, because our cash flow would be significantly reduced. Our average monthly billing is around 3.5 million right now. There are also likely a lot of residents that are still able to pay their utility bills, and they would either have to estimate a monthly amount or would choose not to pay at all. And lastly, customers would have reduced knowledge of the utility charges, which would make budgeting more difficult for them. So just to reiterate, we would prefer option one. Again, it's more cost effective, and we have found that most of the municipalities are going with this option. So I can take any questions.
I have a quick question and then I'll go to you, Jackie. I noticed, I was watching the press conference in Edmonton on Friday when they did this same thing, and it was announced that this would not be automatic, that you had to register to get this deferral. Are we asking people to register?
No, we're not. So we're asking people to contact us if they want their pre-authorized payments stopped. So we will continue, basically business as usual. We'll process the bills, send them out either by e-bill or mail, but only contact us if they want the pause stopped.
The automatic stopped.
Automatic stop, sorry, yes.
Okay. Councillor Hanson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just on that note, so I'm kind of interested, Brenda, thanks for your presentation on what the communication looks like. So if people do have pre-authorized withdrawals happening every month, how are you going, are you going to do this by mail, social media?
Sorry, Jackie, the communication on contacting us?
Yeah, yes. So
Yes.
how are people going to understand that they need to contact you? And how are they going to understand that they can make even small payments? What kind of communique is going to go? How is that going to look? Is really
So
my
I
question.
guess we'll start developing that right away. Put communication on the website, through our social media avenues, Facebook, Twitter, that sort of thing. As soon as we know what your decision is, we'll start working on that quickly.
Thank you for that. And thanks again for all the work that you guys are doing. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
Go ahead, Councillor Jolly.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. Do we have the capability of putting it right on people's bill, saying that, hey, if you're not able to pay at this time, please contact us if you need to stop your automatic withdrawals?
Yes, we sure do. There's a number of text lines that we can add, and we'll put it in bold, colored, large font, whatever, and add that to the bill for sure.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'm seeing no more council hands in the air. Is anybody wanting to actually put a motion on the floor to do option one, or somebody prefer option two? Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Can.
The recommendation that administration be directed to fully implement the first option set out in the report dated March 23rd, 2020, entitled Deferral of Utility Bills, and that steps already taken in support of this option be ratified and approved.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything to add to that?
No, nothing at all.
Anyone else on council? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous. Okay, the next is a conversation about free transit, and I see Mr. Lake is online. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Herron. The intent here is to enhance our, reduce our rider and operation staff interaction. As Council is aware, we have reduced our, restricted our capacity to 50% and increased our cleaning frequencies, which so far operationally has been quite manageable. The next level of protection would be to operate free transit, which would eliminate the need for us to handle cash and fares and passes, both in-house staff and contract staff with the paper products, et cetera. So we have this before you to essentially keep up with our neighbors who have already instituted this.
Any conversations about rear entry onto the buses?
So thank you for that question, Councillor or Mayor Herron. There are a number of jurisdictions, if you do sort of Google it, where rear entry is part of their routine operations. The difference is with St. Albert is that our buses only have 2 doors. City of Edmonton's larger buses, they have 3 doors. Secondly, our bus pads are not the same length as in most other jurisdictions. So we have a fairly limited access point, and eye-to-eye contact with those waiting at the access point is much safer than the bus driver trying to align the rear door to the pad where he thinks it is. And indeed, our snow clearing has been quite good on the bus pads themselves. But if we don't get the alignment of the rear door just right, then patrons will be attempting to climb the windrows to try and get into the back door of the bus.
So can we encourage it if feasible?
We can, certainly we can do that. And we met with transit contractors and operations this morning. And indeed, when snow is less of an issue for us, we think that we can probably move to a more frequent opportunity to do that. But at this point, it's a fairly restricted space.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Broadhead wanting to speak, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Tony. So one of the things, I was on a national call with CUDA the other day, and they're meeting with national ministers in relation to recovery funding for public transit. And one of the things that they talked about was clearly defining not only our missed fair revenue opportunities that we're foregoing as a result of actions like we're going to take today, but also to make sure that we clearly define the reductions in costs as a result of canceling services. So I'm assuming that that's all being done. I just wanted to raise it because when the time comes, the first ones at the door usually get the money. So anyway, just to raise the awareness that that is going on.
Good information.
Yeah, so thank you, Councillor Broadhead. In terms of reductions to services, we are not experiencing anything except that we are moving to our spring schedule a month early. So there's a small reduction if indeed we are going to continue with our routine service. So we haven't reduced operating expenses at this stage, but of course we will track whatever impact that occurs.
Fair enough. That's all that's being asked, I believe. Mayor, when the time comes, I'd love to move the motion.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Mackay.
We're going to try this. Is that any better, Councillor Jolly? Yeah, just that I think I was getting feedback from the mayor's mic. Question to you, Mr. Lake, is around, you've identified in the backgrounder that we've already seen approximately an 80% reduction on normal ridership. Have we been tracking what particular routes that we are like seeing the majority of it? And can we actually look at altering those routes or eliminating routes to save some costs, further costs, if that's possible, or does that just throw a major wrench into everything else?
Thank you for the question. It is a major wrench. It's like pulling one domino out of the row. Mm-hmm. We have, as indicated a little bit earlier, moved to our spring schedule in a transitional step to what we call a modified schedule. So the next level of savings pending ridership, if ridership continues to stay low, we'll likely come back to council with a discussion about switching to what we call a modified service, which is kind of like a Christmas holiday sort of scenario based on the reduction of riders. And in that case, that's a fairly routine scenario for us, and we have all the mechanisms in place to achieve that.
Is there a particular point that we can talk about? I mean, I know we talked about timeframes in the last one in relation to amenities. So we've got in the proposed recommendation, March 24th to May 31st. What would be a trigger? Would be just continued low ridership, or what would be a trigger to go to a modified schedule?
Yeah, continuation of the low ridership and expression of concern about inefficiency of operation.
Would that be come back to council, or would that be a CAO decision?
I'll ask Kevin to maybe respond to that. We'd certainly be providing the information to Kevin first.
Sorry, Counselor, could you rephrase the question for me?
So in relation, no problem, sorry. So in relation to potentially modifying dates or modifying the service level that Mr. Lake was talking about based on continued poor ridership or very poor ridership or even other factors, would a decision to go to a modified delivery system, would that be made back at council with new information, or would that be something that we would just leave with you as the CAO?
So I'll ask today, I'll ask our CLO to help me out with this, but it's my understanding from the powers entrusted until April 6th, I could do that without council, but at the same time, it's not an issue for us to call a special council meeting like we have today to discuss that matter and let council make that decision. So either way, but I'm fine with calling a special council meeting if council members are.
I don't see David picking up, so I'll go with that answer. I think that it's just something that we need to be cognizant of. I mean, if we continue to really get low ridership, we're going to have to look at what that costs, regardless of what Councillor Broadhead had identified as be potentially making sure that we're tracking that so that we are in a good place to be standing at the bus stop that the federal government's going to provide us with. So anyways, that's
Great.
my questions. Thanks, Mr.
We'll keep communications open on that, and with regular talk, we'll decide whether we're coming to council or not on it. So.
And just to follow up, I guess it maybe extends past what we're talking about with transit, but I'm probably fairly confident that we are tracking all of our costs and potential impacts financially, operationally, so that when I understand we're already in the recovery, we're starting some of our recovery currently because it's occurring synonymously actually with our initial response. But as long as we're tracking those things, I think that's really important to make sure we let our residents know that when the aid starts to come from different levels of government, we're well prepared to recoup some of our losses here.
Yeah, I'll talk about that more under the I think it's the 2 items from now, but yeah, we've got a cost model and cost tracking developed. We're still populating with some information, but we have most of it now, and we'll be getting more and more as we progress here. So it's in development. We're in a pretty good shape, but there's still some things we need to build into it.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Mayor.
I think Councillor Hansen, did you have a question too?
Yeah, I did. And I guess it's just to follow up on that. I think when we gave broad delegation to the city manager back on March 13th, I think we don't want to be getting in the way of having special council meetings for things that he can make decisions about. But I would like to have updates on things like transit and usership and all of that on April 6th. So, that's kind of what I don't want to have another special council meeting unless there's a real emergent situation going on. But I would like to be fully updated on all of those kinds of service deliveries on April 6th. So I'm just assuming that we will be getting that. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Kevin or whoever?
Yeah,
okay.
no, we'll have a full report on April 6th.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, does anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, I'm going to go to Councillor Broadhead then to make the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I recommend that council approve eliminating ridership fares in St. Albert Transit System from March 24th, 2020 up to and including May 31st, 2020.
Thank you for that. Any opening comments, Wes?
Just this is a move of public transit across the nation, quite honestly, in terms of providing free public transit to those who need it. I think it's an appropriate direction taken by the city of St. Albert.
Thanks for that. I would also add that when we list things that are essential services like fire and ambulance and utilities, I always say that transit is also listed in that essential service that our municipality provides, because there have been the rare email about just get rid of it for now, but especially in a time of crisis, we actually need to provide this. So I think we need to do this for free. Anything to close, Wes?
Nothing further, Madam Mayor.
All right, call for a show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Awesome, that's unanimous. Capital projects. Is Donnie doing a presentation? She's online. There's she.
Yes, I can.
Where'd she go? There she is. Okay, Donnie, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Due to the unprecedented COVID-19 outbreak, administration is recommending to either defer or continue the projects that are listed in attachment 1 and 2 respectively in an effort to manage cash flows during the event. The deferment will allow administration to review the projects in detail and its impacts prior to April 30th, 2020. In a short time frame, precisely last Friday afternoon, administration pulled all the 2020 projects, both RMR and growth, from across the departments and created the list in front of you today. I would caveat by saying that given the rushed nature of the analysis, the list may contain some carry forward projects, although it was not intended for, as we were not able to verify with each individual department before having this completed for council. And also the list may not be the complete comprehensive list either. Therefore, given the imminent cash flow constraints, consider the list as the first kick at the can, or draft 1, which allows administration to take a deeper dive at the deferred list prior to April 30th, 2020. At this time, administration would be able to provide a refined list to look at in more detail, such as RMR carry forward, RMR 2020, growth carry forward, or growth 2020. And there could be operational projects that may require further analysis, depending on how crucial or our cash flow situation may be in a month from now or 2 to 6 months from now. Please also note that there were a few corrections made since we published the AR last week, which I hope you have a copy now, and also it's on the website. Precisely the changes made were the art and theater life cycle was split into 2 because part of the scope is already awarded and part is deferred. So added a line item in attachment 2 and changed the estimated amount in attachment 1. Second correction made was on the Alpine Park pickleball fence estimate amount, changed from 1 million to 98,000. Also, the third error is capital lifecycle RMR, service and aquatics, has a revised estimated value of 575,800 now. Therefore, administration is recommending that council defer 49 projects as listed in attachment 1 for an estimated value of 36.1 million until further review is completed prior to April 30th, 2020, and that council continue with 51 projects in the year 2020 as listed in attachment 2 for an estimated value of 56.1 million. Thank you.
Okay, so did everybody get the new spreadsheet and new numbers that we sent out about an hour ago? Okay, Councilor McKay, you have a question? Okay, start away.
So can we ask specific questions? I don't want to get into a lot of detail in relation to why some of these projects were presented otherwise. I think otherwise we'd be here potentially all day and we'd have to pull all the backgrounders, but I'm just wondering about some of the possible impacts. For example, on Fire Station 4, you're in the recommendation from administration is that we completely defer it to 2021. Going back to the budget, there was a number of things that were bundled into that, or are we pulling out some of those other items that we had bundled in there, such as the aerial truck purchase? I think it was part of a borrowing bylaw. I know we haven't gone forward with the borrowing bylaw yet, but what about, I think there was the aerial truck, there was some and staff, because wasn't staff included in that as well? So there were 10 additional firefighter emergency management personnel, as well as the training person. So is that also going to be impacted by that deferral?
Through the chair, Council Mackay, yes, whatever is deferred to 2021, what was part of the scope package is also deferred. Because if you're not proceeding with fire hall number 4, we may not need all the other accessories to go with it. But having said that, we can take a second look at it before April 30th, and maybe staff will have a better idea what are the impacts would be.
Mr. Scoble, you want to add to that?
If I could just add on the personnel. So the personnel were partially for Fire Hall 4, but that wasn't the main reason for the request this year. The main request was the change in the NFPA standards for additional personnel on response vehicles. So, you know, we're not, I would say the personnel is not part of this. We plan to proceed with that, given that it was not in, you know, it was more associated with the NFPA requirements than starting to staff up for Fire Hall 4.
Can you mute? Sorry, I'm just waiting for the mayor to mute so we don't get the feedback. Okay, so, but in relation to some of the purchasing along that, well, what's going to be the impact? I mean, obviously that's going to have some impact down the line. I mean, we don't know. I mean, based on, I guess, our previous discussion with potential assistance from other levels of government, there might be a lot of incentives that might actually help us in this deferral. But at the same time, have we had an opportunity to look at some of the potential impacts? Or by, I mean, and I'm only identifying that one because I think that's the only one administration has actually put forward to come back, or not come back in May, but actually defer completely. So I think there's one other one as I'm looking right now. But anyways, I think, what are some of the other impacts that we're going to see? Because there's going to be additional costs, I'm sure.
Councillor Mackay, if I can add, the reasoning behind the way we analyzed this, anything that's awarded already, please proceed, is the basic decision we have made. Anything that are not awarded but in the market right now, which would have closure of that contract sometime between now and April 30th, we said we'll take a pause and have a look at it and see what the impacts, because there's a 90-day clause in our contracts to get it awarded. Those that are not awarded or not gone out into the market, let's have a second look at it before April 30th. That's also in the deferred list that will allow administration to look at all the impacts that you've talked about. Is there a grand implication here before we defer further or cancel? So that will all come back as a draft 2, I hope, before the April 30th for a decision.
So on the attachment 2, the fire truck that's a go for April 30th, we have, it's 1.4. So is that reason we're moving forward with the fire truck is because we're already in procurement and we have to, I mean, I know in relation to whenever you're trying to purchase specialized equipment, you got to get in line in the production line to make sure you don't lose your spot. So is that kind of the thinking behind that one?
That's right. It's still not in market yet, but we have considered that as a go ahead because of the very reasons that you've talked about. We need to get into the market to get that going.
Okay. One other question to either yourself, Ms. George, or Mr. Scoble. Can you waste energy at the very bottom? Are we committed to that? The 3.5, is there a commitment required for us, or is that something that we could move over to deferred?
So there's no commitments at this time. Discussions with the technology provider and potential partners are still ongoing.
So I mean,
that said, you know, it would come under that 90 days, I believe, that Donnie was talking about, because they did go out to the marketplace for tender for the technology. So, you know, I guess the tender submitted may not be valid beyond those 90 days.
Fair enough. I'm just asking for questions for clarification, just trying to get a little bit idea around the criteria that administration put forward in relation to moving this. Just a point, and help me out in the sense, I mean, we've totaled all these up. So the deferred ones, as you mentioned, Ms. George, come to 36,131. That money's like, we can't use that money for operations, right? That's committed money.
Yes, Councillor Mackay, yes, that's a committed money, but let's say a month from now, 2 months from now, if we run into cash flow issues between CAO and council, we can make the decision to take that money out, freeze it up, take it to operations or whatever needs we may have, which at that point we have to decide then, are we canceling these projects for a future year or deferring it for a future year?
If I could just add to Donnie's comments. So in a couple weeks, probably April 6th, we'll be bringing, I guess, different financial scenarios to council. So we are looking at things like lost revenues, increased operating costs, certainly capital deferrals or impacts of proceeding with capital. And then of course, we'll be bringing our, an analysis of our investments forward too. So we'll have different scenarios and trying to project out what the situation looks for us for, the next 3 months, the next, and the remainder of the year for that matter. So there'll be a lot more fulsome discussion of overall on the city's finances coming on April 6th.
And I appreciate all the work. I'm just trying to make sure that when we go through it, we're not, by saying that we've identified $36 million, we can't just automatically flip that over into operations, that there's an understanding that it's still committed at this particular time. And so this is just right now, it's potential. I guess the other thing is just the last question, and I'll follow up. I mean, we're not taking any of these projects and that's deferred. That's going to put us in a less than ready position, so that let's say the government comes out with some incentives for shovel-ready projects. Is there anything in there that I realize we've had some discussion in relation online around potentially some of the bigger projects, but what about some of these other ones that, and I'm looking at Lakeview Business, Badgerlands, the ASP, some of those ones, are we by deferring them there, do we potentially miss an opportunity to use other government money to move these things forward?
So maybe I'll jump in and then maybe Donnie can help. So in the case of the Badger ASP, that's an ASP preparation. So that wouldn't lead to shovel readiness anyways. But I believe some of the other programs, smaller programs, like I believe the Safe Journeys to School and that sort of thing, and the line repainting and things like that are on the deferral list off the top of my head without looking at it. I mean, those could be considered shovel ready. Some of the smaller ones, definitely.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not accidentally like making us less than ready to move forward when we have an opportunity to recover from this current situation. Anyways, I've dominated. I apologize. I will mute.
I think I saw Councillor Watkins, and is there anyone else wanting to speak? Okay, go ahead, Ray. You need to unmute.
Mine is really the decisions around how we came to the decisions to delay and defer the things we did. So am I hearing correctly that if something was tendered and we've signed a contract, we are going forward with it? That's the first question.
That's correct.
Okay. If there is a tender that is out, we are extending the tender deadline, or are we taking the tender numbers and asking for 90 days on those numbers?
The way our current contract is written, we already have a 90-day clause in there. So anything that's out in the market, we have extended the timelines till April 30th.
So if we have tendered numbers back, on a project, those numbers are good for 90 days, correct?
That's correct.
And on those projects that we have tendered numbers out, are we going ahead on those ones?
Those will have a 90-day clause in there as well, but we allowed additional time for people to give tender packages to us until April 30th, which allows administration to have a second look at all those that are out in the market. That's why it's all on the deferred list. Most of it's on the deferred list if it's not impacting public safety or any safety concern attached to the project. So that allows administration to look at it again before April 30th, to have a second look at it. Should we proceed as planned, or should we take a pause and then defer some of it for future months or even future years?
Okay. And so that would include the affordable housing proposal, right? So there's an extension of 90 days on the submission of requests?
The answer is yes.
All right. And then my final thing is just a word of caution is we have to make sure that we don't postpone so many things that we end up shutting down the economy and end up creating more negativity ourselves, right? So we should try to go ahead with as many things as we can and still kind of keep the economy moving instead of trying to shut down as many things as we can. Just comment.
I echo your comment, Councillor. We have also got information back from our construction association and the consultants world, the external parties who are providing us services with, that they are all going ahead as planned, not shutting down. So we are proceeding as much as possible with all the projects until such time as they shut down or our internal resources are constrained to provide services.
Okay, correct. That's great then. Thank you. Those are my questions, Madam Mayor.
Excellent. Is there any more questions? Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mackay sort of touched on this. Let me just clarify in my own mind. So, Mr. Scoble, you sent out this morning that the government will be looking for shovel-ready projects. Is this an opportunity to release a little bit of funds here? For example, preparing the engineering documents for the Rohit servicing project. I mean, that's significant dollars. Perhaps we could advance that by being shovel ready. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, thank you for the question, Councillor. Of course, it's always the prerogative of council of how you want to allocate your money, and that includes your capital plans. So, if council did want to, you could release some funds from some of these projects on the deferral list and put that money towards the servicing of the Rohit lands. That project's not currently shovel ready. We would have to do our pre-design and design, but that said, we could expedite that to get it to a state of being shovel ready in I don't know, Donnie, maybe four months, maybe. I think that there's a lot of, again, in terms of stimulating the economy, the engineering houses could probably jump on something like this and really expedite it right now. I believe our estimate, again, it's not a solid estimate, but our estimate on pre-design and design is $4.5 million. So yes, council could reallocate some money from some of the projects on the list to any project. That's always the prerogative of council.
Thank you for that. So if we were to do something like that, and we were to spend the money, but we weren't granted the federal dollars to go ahead with construction, would those dollars be sunk costs? Would the engineering always, like, what's the horizon on the value of the actual work?
Well, the design itself would not change over time. You can always put that on the shelf. Over time, in terms of the construction of the project, you may see cost escalation or cost de-escalation, depending what's happening in the economy. But it's not uncommon to do pre-design and design work, and then if need be, put it on the shelf for a couple of years till you're ready to do construction.
Okay, fair enough. Madam Mayor, I'll come back to me because I think I'd like to advance something like that. Give me some thought. I believe Mr. Scoble asked Ledge to have a motion around it, but in any case, come back to me if you don't mind.
I will, for sure. I'm looking over at you, Mr. LaFleur. Do we have a motion ready?
Sorry, my apologies. Can you hear me? Yes, no, we don't have a motion ready. I'm just waiting to see what council does, and I can have it written down very quickly.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think it was Councillor Hanson had a question. Okay, go ahead.
I guess my question is just times are changing, it seems, every day with the situation that we find ourselves in. And I guess I'm looking to Donnie to provide me some answers of what happens if these construction what happens if we lose the manpower at these places that are providing us services to move our projects ahead? I guess that's just part of the review and part of what we'll get back on April 30th. And because the reality is some of this might not be able to go ahead simply because the situation is changing every day, and some people are down and out and some people are isolating, and there may not be manpower for a little while. Does that affect any of this, I guess, is my question.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Yes, that's because of the nature of the COVID-19 outbreak that we're dealing with. Everything is changing by the week, by the day. So right now, that's why administration is recommending to take slow steps, if you will. Those that are in the market, please go ahead and continue the projects, because we have the contractors and consultants working from home, and the contractors has promised that they will keep the social distancing if it ever makes it to a site construction phase. So we have that comfort there, those that are proceeding. And that's why we are evaluating in another month, if things changes out of the deferred list, do we need to have a further scrutiny on those lists in terms of, basically our primary objective today is to manage our cash flows. If you run into issues, we need to make some decisions quickly there to pull some projects out of the list and then repurpose it or defer it for another 2 years or a year from now or a few months from now. So all that questions are up in the air. I don't have answers for that each one today, but all our resources are working in the background to help us move the projects that are already awarded to move ahead. Until such time we get to hear from the contractors and consultants, sorry, we cannot proceed any further, then we will go into the contractual clauses to deal with each individual project case by case.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess my last comment on that would be that these all kind of feel like barriers that we can't get work done, or we're going ahead and there's lots of ifs and buts, but there's also the opportunity to work closely with our partners, work closely with the people who are providing the services to move these projects forward, and they're facing the same thing we are, so it's all kind of relative, but there could be opportunities there to review these projects with them and find new solutions. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, I'm going to go back to Wes in a sec, but Mr. Scoble, just to kind of sum up. So of the deferred projects, I only see 2 that are deferred a whole year, as Councillor Mackay had pointed out, and the rest are going to be reviewed or deferred to either April 30th or May 31st. And so April 30th, we're going to have a little bit more of a wholesome discussion on a case-by-case basis. Is that what we should expect?
That's correct.
Okay. So
Yeah,
do we
so
have a meeting on the 30th? Did we check that? I guess we can always have a meeting, but is it one of our regular meetings? I'm just checking, hold on.
So while we're checking that, I might add that we'll continue to work with the construction associations and developers, and that we'll have some more discussions, and we'll keep this a live discussion, and you know, it may form part of the further discussion on finances on April 6th as well. So this will be a bit of a, you know, fluid and dynamic and work in progress, I guess. So we'll keep it live and keep updating and keep talking to our partners as well.
Okay, I just looked and we have a regular scheduled meeting on the 20th of April and then nothing till May 4th. So maybe on the 20th, we could have the conversation and then make decisions at that point of April. I'm seeing nods from Donnie and Kevin. Okay.
We can work towards that, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Broadhead, Councillor, would you like to make a motion with a one little change to it, or how do you want to go forward?
I was thinking of making the 2 recommendations and then add a third one in relation to adding the work related to getting the road, whatever that project is, shovel ready. I'm assuming there's a project number in relation to that, and then we could just reference that. If Mr. Lafleur has something ready, be more than happy to take his guidance on this.
So through the chair to Councillor Broadhead, I do not have sufficient background to be able to craft anything. If there's a desire to take a motion recess so that we can speak, with Mr. Scoble and Donnie George, I would be happy to do that. But I don't feel like I know enough about this issue to write anything meaningful right now.
Yeah, we can do that. I would recommend that to council. Just for clarification, there is no project number yet. I mean, this was basically approved by council in early January to not even the servicing, but the selection of the future community amenity site. So associated capital projects with that, like servicing, would have come forward in this budget. But that's not to say we can't do that now. It's just there's no project on the books, so to speak, at this point in time.
Could Wes put a motion 3 that just says accelerate the servicing of the future rec center?
Yeah, we'll
bring back options by April 20th.
Yeah, I would suggest we do a motion recess, but it'll be more to the effect that administration undertake pre-design and design of this project and expedite pre-design and design. So that's probably what the motion will come back as.
All right, I guess we're taking a 5-minute recess. How are we going to do this? Oh.
Just like that.
Okay, so I can't see everybody now all of a sudden. Yeah, I need David, just, you can scribble something down in 5 minutes.
Yeah, administration will talk by cell phone offline here and be back to you.
Okay, Stephanie, we'll be back. We're only taking 5 minutes, so bring us back in 5 minutes.
This is working really well, Kathy.
It's not so bad. We should do this all the time.
Without the pandemic next time, Kathy.
Just to note, guys, I can still hear you on the live feed.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
She'll be able to hear you, but so will the live feed.
That's fine. I was just going to suggest that once the new motion gets crafted, if Mr. LaFleur could email it out, and that way then I can just read it off the email, because I don't know if you have a opportunity to project it or not.
Hello. You can see. What are you gonna say?
Hello.
You say hi, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hey, are you staying out of your mom's way?
She told me to come down here.
I asked her if she'd like to come see what I was doing.
I saw the Prime Minister yesterday in his address. He was thanking all the kids, and I'm like, thank the kids for picking up extra chores to help mom around the house and staying out of mom's way because she has to work.
That's great.
All right, it's been 5 minutes. Do we have a motion, David? He says he's working on it. Okay. Stephanie, are we still being live broadcast?
You are, yeah.
All right, so I will not start singing.
Mayor Herron and Councillor Broadhead, I'm just wondering if we could have this motion on April 6th, because it would give time for it to be crafted, and we could also just get a backgrounder about what.
Well, let's see what the motion is, and then that's not a bad idea.
I'm a little hesitant to start committing money that I'm not even sure how much it is, when we really aren't sure what the costs are going to be to get through this. And I totally understand the intention. I'm just not sure about what I'm actually even committing myself to, or the potential consequences. So I'm not sure how open you are, Councillor Broadhead, to just doing it on April 6th and letting us have some time to think about it, because it's not going anywhere, even if we were to do it in 2 weeks from now.
Hey, I'm totally open to that. It's not a bad suggestion at all. I just, here's an opportunity perhaps to get access to some stimulus money coming out of the feds, but 2 weeks won't matter, that's for sure.
Let's hear the motion first, and then we can figure out how much it's committing us to, and we can talk to Mr. Scoble about his thoughts on commitment.
Okay, fair enough.
So are we ready with the motion? Who's got it? Oh. No, that's okay. We get that. So we'll just get it verbal. He's still scribbling. I think it is a good idea to see what we can. Yes, we are live waiting for you, David. Sorry.
Mayor Herron, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Chief Legislative Officer Dave LaFleur speaking. I'm proposing the following motion. Now, we don't have the ability to put it on the screen, so I'll read it as slowly and clearly as I can. That administration prioritize and accelerate the process of servicing the Range Road 260 lands that Council has approved as the site of a community recreation facility, and that administration present for council's consideration on April 6th or as soon as possible thereafter, any necessary supplementary approvals, including a borrowing bylaw if needed, at a project charter.
Okay, so I had a question on the group chat that if could David send this revision via email. I don't think he can because he just doesn't have it typed up. He just wrote it out. I'm seeing some hands, but I'm actually gonna go to Councillor Broadhead first because it's his proposed additional motion. So when we get to the motions, Wes, is that something that you would want to put forward? It's asking for more information by April 6th, or do you want to wait till April 6th to move the motion? Your call.
Well, I don't mind making the motion today because basically we're not committing to anything until April the 6th in any case. So if Councillor Hughes is okay with that and the rest of council is okay with that, it's committing administration to do a little work in preparation for April 6th. But I don't think we're committing to actual funding before April 6th. Would that be a clear interpretation of that motion?
I think that's the way I interpret it, and thank you for allowing but we're going to do due process. So when we get to the motions, Councillor Broadhead, I'm going to get you to make them and add that last one on.
Okay.
If somebody wants to amend it or change it, we'll take that motion, but we'll do this through due process. I'm actually just going to look at Mr. Scoble first. I'm seeing hands go up. I get it. Just give me 2 seconds, everyone. Mr. Scoble, the resources available to execute that motion, can you get it done by April 6th?
Yes, I believe we can. Again, we are working remotely, and engineering can do that work. I guess the point I would add from the earlier discussion that enables us is, we aren't actually able to receive the tenders right now for some of those projects that we're suggesting because they can't physically be dropped off with the building closures and that. So I guess with some of those projects, if these motions go through, I guess going into deferral till April 30th, that does free up resources for us to focus on this project.
Okay. All right, now I think I saw Councillor Hansen's hand go up and Councillor Jolly. So we'll start with Councillor Hansen and I'll go to you, Natalie.
Thank you. Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't I hear you say that there should be some efforts made to get funding from the feds, and should that actual activity be included in a motion going forward, that there be an effort to?
I think that was when we were talking about transit. The money that we're talking shovel ready is coming from the province, my understanding.
Oh, okay. Well, whoever it's coming from, do we need to articulate that in the motion is all I'm asking.
David could reread it, but I believe we've said expedite the pre-design and design. So typically the provincial funding or any level of funding for that matter comes for shovel ready projects. So the intent is to advance the pre-design design to get the project shovel ready so that we can apply for funding from other levels of government. Understood.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right, Councillor Jolly.
Thank you. Mr. Scoble, I guess I just want to make sure that your interpretation of this motion is the same. I saw nods around council saying that, yes, this makes sense. This is just kind of getting our ducks in a row to be ready to make a decision about potential dollars on later in April. Are you seeing the same? Do you have the same interpretation that kind of we've discussed?
I do, but maybe perhaps we should ask Mr. Lafleur that, because he's got the motion in front of him there, and that's my understanding of it. But we should double check with him that we're not committed here as our solicitor.
And Mr. Lafleur, do you have comments?
Yeah, I am within seconds of being able to email the motion to all of you. So if you just hold on for that. And I also agree with the comments I've heard that this isn't committing to any dollars right now other than the internal cost of people's salaries and such to get ready for April 6th.
We're just going to wait for you to email that to us. Actually, while we're waiting, he's emailing it. Councillor Broadhead, are you willing to do the other motions on the capital projects as well? Okay,
Absolutely.
that's an affirmative. Why don't we actually get those two read into the record now, because I'm seeing no more questions. And we can vote on the first two, and then the additional motion we'll take as a separate motion once our emails come through. So Wes, do you want to read the first two?
Okay.
And don't
I
forget,
recommend-
there's some new numbers that was in the package. Right, they were emailed it to us today?
Okay.
If you read it, I'll
Recommend
correct you
that-
if you're wrong. Yeah.
Okay, I recommend that council defer 49 projects as listed in attachment 1 for an estimated value of 36.1 million until further review is completed prior to April 30th, 2020. And secondly, that council continue with 51 projects in the year 2020 as listed in attachment 2 for an estimated value of 56.1 million.
All right, thanks. I'll accept that motion. Anything to add to that?
No, you had the discussion.
Question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackay has a question. Go ahead.
I'm just in for, on number 2, I'm assuming that time frame is, are we impacted by any time frames there on number 2? See, in number 1, you have,
Number 2 is the just going ahead with regular business.
okay,
essentially.
so not to be reevaluated. Okay. I see.
Okay, any other questions? Any comments on this? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So when I read it, like there's still no dollars involved in this, right? We're just going to be going through the paperwork. That's, I just want to be absolutely crystal clear, because I mean, it says accelerating the process of pre-design and design.
We're only voting on the first two motions. We're not talking
Sorry,
about that one yet.
I was looking at the third one, I got so excited. I got nothing on this one right now.
Okay. All right, any more comments? All right, I'm going to call for the vote on the two motions, one to defer the 49 projects and carry on with 51. So 1, 2. Okay, that's unanimous. All right, if you open up your email, everyone. Wes, do you have it?
I do.
Can you read it into the record?
Recommend that administration prioritize accelerating the process of pre-design and design for servicing the Range Road 260 lands that council has approved as a site of a community recreation facility, and that administration present for council's consideration on April 6th or as soon as possible thereafter any additional or ancillary approvals needed to advance this initiative, including a borrowing bylaw if needed and a project charter.
Excellent. Good time to borrow money right now. Anything to add on to that? Any comments for debate? Okay, hold on. Councillor Hughes, I'm going to go to you. Do you have an amendment? Okay. Okay, is it comments? Give me an, okay, let Wes do opening first, and then I'll go to you.
I have a question about it.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure, because it looks to me like we're committing like a project that we're not even sure how much it costs right now, because it says, you know, including a borrowing bylaw if needed, anything else that we need to do. So I just want to absolutely be clear here that we're just doing paperwork right now, and we're not actually approving anything further. Like, I just want to be absolutely crystal clear on this.
I'm going to go to Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah, with the permission of the mayor, because given there's a motion on the floor, I can certainly answer that. So there's not a commitment. Again, it's pre-design design, and it's developing the charter and developing potentially a borrowing bylaw or any other thing. I guess I should note that this would also be contingent on discussions with Rohit themselves, and if you remember back to January, this this involved the city receiving the land for free if we're to do the servicing. So, it would also probably be contingent on I guess getting title to that land. I mean, the two go hand in hand, and so as part of this process of accelerating, we will have to, as per the motion, we will have to advanced discussions with Rohit about the title to the property as well.
Okay, so this is just talking about getting it together and just doing the.
Yeah, and I guess to further answer your question, like if council on April 6th proceeded to next steps, then we would have to go out into the marketplace to obtain external engineering to undertake the pre-design and design. So, you know, there's no contracts out in the marketplace for that work right now. So, yeah, it's internal resources and working with the owner of that property about title to that property. And like I said, the servicing and the ownership of the property by the city go hand in hand. So we do need to have discussions with the owner of that property as well.
Okay, I mean, because I'm just, when I look at this, I'm thinking, I understand the intention, Councillor Broadhead. I'm just concerned about us putting a lot of money into something where there may not actually be the funding in the end to help us pay for it, and we may not actually have the funding available to pay for it either. I mean, the projects that we've canceled or deferred are still necessary projects in many ways. They're not, we can't stop filling potholes or doing road repair or that kind of thing. And so I'm just a little concerned about being committed to something and then not actually have the opportunity there for us to take advantage of it. So that's why I'm a little hesitant on this. But if we're not actually committing to anything yet, I'm looking for a really great backgrounder when this does come to council to make sure that we know exactly what we're committing to and what contingencies, and perhaps we need to have it where it's contingent upon all these other things happening before we go forward on a borrowing bylaw. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I've got Kevin wanting to respond to that, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Watkins.
And just one comment on contingent, like if, you know, if again, the direction by council was to work with Rohit to gain title to that land, and as per the agreement that was put before, or not the agreement, I guess the proposal that was put before council, you know, the land is free to the city if we do the servicing, right? So again, it would be premature for us to expend any money on servicing if we have not come to an agreement. And that agreement is subject to council approval. And then again, if there's no agreement, there's no need to service, but I also expect that in the, you know, as part of the agreement, there would be an expectation that the city will service those lands. So.
Councillor Watkins? You need to, okay.
When do we expect to have title, or when are we expecting to have title to that land?
Well, we had started discussions with the developer before the onset of the pandemic here. So, you know, we haven't advanced any discussions in the last couple of weeks, but we will pick those up again if council approves this motion.
And we have not done any pre-design on it, but I guess Rohit has done some pre-design in some ways to say there are options and different ways in which they can service the land. Is that correct? Like we have a number of options in which we can service the land?
I can't speak for Rohit, what they've done. I do know that our two estimates, administration did a conceptual design, not the same as pre-design. And I know our conceptual design was within a couple $1 million of Rohit's estimate, but I don't know the scale of the design work they've done. We would have to follow up on that.
And what do we estimate the cost of this pre-design work is? Because I'm a little hesitant to go ahead with this, considering that we don't have the land yet and we don't know how it's going to be serviced. So what would be the costs you're looking at?
So again, we have a very conceptual estimate. We took it based on percentages. So I think it was 22.5 million was the estimated conceptual design cost.
Donnie sent out an email at 11:30, so it's in there, Ray.
And then from there, Donnie took the typical engineering percentage, 15% of that, I believe, to come up with 4.5 is our conceptual. If I may, I might suggest, you know, just hearing some of the concerns from council members that perhaps we may want to amend the motion to include the transfer of ownership, which has to come back to council for approval anyways, because again, if there's no agreement, and like I said, the two will go hand in hand, but if there's no agreement on transfer of title to the city for free, the servicing work would not progress. So there is, I guess, some parallel requirements, I guess. I wouldn't say one's prerequisite over the other.
Kevin, can't that transfer of ownership go into the April 6th package as a contingency?
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, good
I
there.
think I'll let Dave tell me I'm wrong, but I think by the way he's worded the motion that the discussions with the current property owner fits into the spirit of that to come back on April 6th.
David, do you agree?
Yeah, yes, the wording, any additional or ancillary approvals was deliberately broad that would include that. And also, if I may, just in response to Councillor Hughes' concern, that's also why there are no dollar figures here. Council is not committing to any money if you make a motion that doesn't have a dollar figure. So those are the 2 points that I would make about the motion. I think it covers what you need to have covered. It really is a statement of political will, a statement of policy, giving the CAO his marching orders that this is a high priority, and come back to council as soon as possible with all that you need to make it happen.
I still have another question.
Okay, keep going, Ray.
And what, Councillor Broadhead, what is your intent again of this motion? You said that the province is going to have money ready for shovel-ready projects. You think when we come out of this?
There's
Okay,
no official policy announced by the province yet, but there is some, again, all levels of government are talking about stimulus, economic stimulus as part of recovery from this pandemic.
and Jason Kenney did actually send that message to municipalities specifically. Have your projects ready.
So my question to Councillor Broadhead is it's your opinion, or you're thinking that if we can get this shell ready in the next 3 to 4 months, that when there's money available from the province, that we have a better shot at getting it if it's shovel ready?
Well, what I've known in the past is that we haven't had shovel-ready projects on the books, and we've missed out on stimulus money as a result. Now, we do have 2, Ray Gibbon Drive, and we've got the St. Albert Trail northbound shovel-ready. But if we have this one here, it'll just add to our ability to attract stimulus funding.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions for now. I may have some more.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Okay, so I understand the whole intention, and it's a good intention, Councillor Broadhead. What I'm wondering right now is, if it's not serviced, like, first of all, we don't have the land. But let's assume we got the land. Somehow it magically happened in the middle of a pandemic that this land transfer went forward. I thought that shovel ready meant serviced. And I also thought that servicing is going to take like a year, even if we were to do it quickly. So I'm not sure if we can achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve, regardless of how much of a priority you put on this. So I'm not sure, Mr. Scoble, if you can respond to that, because I'm thinking we might be running, but we might be too far behind the end goal to be able to achieve it regardless of the intentions.
Well, I guess my response is, it's an opportunity to get in the game. My experience with these situations and significant economic downturns, and that is, you can really get a lot done quickly. Everybody's going to be hungry to generate some cash flow, and you can really fast track some projects. Again, going into this pandemic, the economic downturn was already underway, and so I wouldn't anticipate that availability of engineering and contracting resources, which sometimes inhibits your ability to get a project done in a timely manner, will be an issue. In fact, I think there'll be very aggressive construction schedules coming out of this, with lots of parties interested in doing that work.
Okay, so you're saying that even though we really have done just step 1, that we could probably get to shovel ready step 4 or 5 quickly, if necessary.
Yeah, I also believe that, I can't speak for the engineering consulting industry, but I imagine that they have resources right now with the slowdown prior to the pandemic, and then of course further slowdown during the pandemic. So, I think it's a good opportunity to get some of the private sector working through all phases of this, whether it's pre-design and design or the actual construction. The city of St. Albert can contribute to reinvigorating the economy.
Okay, that sounds good. And just council, just FYI, apparently Italy's had the second day of decreased numbers of new cases. So
excellent.
the first sign of hope. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Watkins, can you put yourself on mute as we carry on? So Councillor Broadhead. I think we're back to you. Oh,
Fair
sorry, I
enough.
forgot about Ken. He's got a question. Go ahead.
Can you mute? Can you mute? All good discussion. My question is more around what, you know, are we limiting ourselves just to look at this? Is there, you know, Councillor Broadhead, you identified that there were 2 others. Potentially, could we be looking at moving the goalposts a little quicker on Ray Gibbon Drive, particularly, you know, the province's pre-commitment? You know, they might be looking at it, and I realize there's no pre-design. I mean, we haven't done that work yet either, but are we limiting ourselves by just identifying Range Road 260? And is there not an opportunity that maybe in the motion that we broaden it to ask administration to investigate all the opportunities to move forward with and come back with some projects versus specifically directing them on one? And just a question I pose, maybe, I don't know, maybe to you, Wes.
Well, it's a good question, Councillor. You know, Mr. Scobell might be able to bring insight into that. Range Road 260 came to my mind, so.
I guess I could just add to or help to answer the Councillor Mackay's questions. So if you look at the attachments there, Ray Gibbon Drive Phase 1 is ready to go for construction, and that was always the plan prior to this. So it's shovel ready. Phase 1 is from 137th Avenue to just north of Leclerc Way. And then, of course, also on the list is we're ready to advance. It's shovel ready, St. Albert Trail North up to, correct me if I'm wrong, Donnie, but I believe to Coal Mine Road this year. So, you know, those are probably our 3, I guess, major infrastructure projects. 2 of them are shovel ready, and then the third would be the Rohit land servicing. I mean, we have smaller capital projects, but those are our big 3 infrastructure projects at the moment. So 2 of 3 are shovel ready, and if council proceeds with this motion, we'll be working to get our 3rd major infrastructure project shovel ready as soon as possible.
I guess, and just follow up is more of a comment. When I'm looking at the proposed wording, I just wonder sometimes if we're being too specific in direction to administration, and we limit our opportunities. And I would hope, and I realize administration's in the middle of a pandemic response at this particular time, and so they have to prioritize their work too. But why would we? I mean, potentially one of the biggest impacts on our community is something that we could be have the work ready, shovel ready, and have that completed and ready for submission for programs that come from different levels of government. But that doesn't necessarily stop us from also looking at what would investigating the possibility around Range Road 260 as well. So what I'm talking myself into here, is there a possibility of amendment to the motion that just is more of a just that administration investigate ongoing opportunities for both existing shovel ready projects and potential projects? Or am I just going down a rabbit hole here?
I'm going to just look to Mr. Scobell. Like, we have to remember this is a council motion, and Wes has the right to pick one project and push it forward. And Mr. Scobell, just give me a nod. I'm going to assume that the work that your staff is doing would identify shovel ready projects. In the eventuality of a provincial announcement of stimulus money, you would be ready to go.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we need an amendment, because I'm assuming that's already happening, unless you want to.
No, I'm not going to, like I said, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here.
I guess one
Can you-
comment, if I could add, is there a preference of council? So when I mentioned the three big infrastructure projects being St. Albert Trail, Ray Gibbon Drive, and servicing of the Rohit, those are driven for economic growth. Now, I mean, we have one other big project, for example, the barrier wall. But that's not going to generate economic growth. It will generate, I guess, employment for a contractor. But that might be another thing council may want to think about is, do you want us to focus on things that are going to help with economic recovery and economic growth in the community, I guess, versus, the barrier walls, if you want to call it that, a replacement in kind, though it is an upgrade, right? But it doesn't generate economic growth and creation of jobs in the longer term.
I agree. Ray, you wanted to add to that? We can't hear you, Ray.
Are we in questioning or still debate now?
We're all over the place right now. I haven't really started. I haven't allowed Wes to do opening comments, so we're still questioning.
So I have a question actually. So we're trying to say we're going to get these lands shovel ready. Now I see shovel ready as two different things. There's shovel ready to build a building on, and there's shovel ready to build infrastructure so that you can have lots to build buildings on. So the government is saying they're ready for shovel-ready projects. Are they talking about shovel-ready infrastructure projects such as roads and bridges? Or are they talking about shovel-ready infrastructure projects such as schools and hospitals? Because those are two different things and two different requirements. So that's kind of my first question of administration or of Wes.
So I guess I can respond to that. I don't know at this point, but typically in historical granting programs, it does include things like roads and water and sewer treatment and transmission type stuff, which is what this would be, right?
Okay.
Getting the transmission for water and sewer to those lands, and then the on-site costs coming from there. So, I don't know. There hasn't been an announcement made, but in my experience in the past, there is again. Like the AWWMP program years ago with the water treatment, wastewater treatment, and that included transmission lines and all that kind of stuff as well. So it could be both. It could be one of, I don't know, but my experience is there has been grants available for offsite leviable type projects in the past.
And we would think that this money would be available in the next 4 to 6 months. Is that what we're thinking?
Well, again, that would come down to announcements by other levels of government, but they have been sending messaging.
That's what we're anticipating, and that's why we're doing this, I would assume.
Correct.
It's coming in the next 4 to 6 months. So, and my final question, so you're confident that you can go from pre-design to preliminary design to detailed design and get approvals from the province, Alberta Environment, and city officials in the next 4 to 6 months here on a project for an infrastructure like that?
I'm not saying it's not going to be without challenge, that's for sure. But I believe there is the general appetite out there from all parties to get work advanced in an expedient manner right now.
Yeah, I think there is too, but I think it's going to be, I think there's a lot of people thinking the same things, and I don't think it's going to be that easy that to me that much free space coming up on all these things. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay. Well, good. Did I see Councillor Jolly? Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, to Mr. Scoble. So if all the stars aligned in terms of permitting grants, all that kind of thing, you've talked before about servicing and building projects happening concurrently. Is that the kind of option that would be a potential for this project that we'll take another look at in April?
So the servicing, yes, I've seen projects go where a community amenity building is being built concurrently with the offsite servicing to that amenity done. But again, that's right now we're talking servicing. A discussion of building a community amenity building would be a separate discussion that council would have to have. But to answer your question, yes, they can be done concurrently.
Thank you. I'm just talking about stars aligned kind of scenarios. Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, Councillor Broadhead, it's back to you. The motion is as Mr. Lafleur had emailed. I don't think I've heard any amendments that are being requested, so And you've already read it into the record, so why don't we go ahead with opening arguments?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. And so the intent from my perspective in advancing this particular motion is just to prepare to have a shovel-ready project in relation to the Range Road 260 lands. One of the things that has been a priority for this council is to identify lands for our next recreational facility in our community. And while those dollars aren't being talked about here, and it may be some years away before we actually are able to build something, the prerequisite before we can even enter into those kinds of conversation is that the land is actually serviced. And even though we could service it and build it concurrently, as Councillor Jolly determined through her last questions, I'm not sure that we're in the ballpark for that to happen in the stimulus funding that's coming. But now, having said that, provincially and federally, they're talking about some significant dollars to help our country come out of this whole COVID-19 crisis, if you will. And from my perspective, if you're at the table ready to go, then your projects are considered. If you're not ready and you don't have a project ready to go, somebody else who does have a project ready to go will be considered. And so from my perspective, we're going to have to do this work anyway to get this land online. And that's why I asked the question about the viability of the work. If we went forward with this, would it still be good 5 or 6 years from now? And while the dollar values to get the work might be done, to get done might change, the engineering plan and the engineering work would not be stale. And so it's not sunk costs, even if we went down this road. So it's worthy work. The second thing is we're going to have an opportunity on April 6th to have a sober second look at this whole program, because they have to come back with a project charter and a business case, or an administrative backgrounder at least. And then that'll give us an opportunity to take a look at this again. Additionally, I suspect we'll hear some sort of announcements out of the province and the feds in terms of what they're going to do to re-stimulate the economy. They've talked about dollars, but really talk is talk until you actually see what the details of the programs are. And then we can, we'll have 2 more weeks at least to see how that rolls out, and we can make a decision, yay or nay, on the 6th.
Excellent. Is there anyone else wanting to weigh in on debate? Councillor Hanson, and then I'll go to you, Ray.
Thank you, and thanks, Wes, for bringing this forward. I'm going to totally support it. I think there is going to be an appetite for stimulus projects. I also think that this isn't just for our own community. This is going to be a regional asset, and I think that the province and the feds are looking for projects that have reach, and this is the kind of thing that does. And so I think it is a good one to focus on, and rather than, and I think it's actually good for us to be specific about a particular project, so the government doesn't have a bunch of decisions to make. They can just understand where we're going with it, provide stimulus, let us get going. So I think it's great that you're bringing this forward, and I'm in full support.
Thank you. Ray, you're on mute again. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be supporting it, because I think the government is talking about projects that are shovel ready, truly shovel ready now, and they probably have a whole list of different projects that they think that they've been putting off, or they don't have the money to spend, that they have ideas of shovel ready projects. And we are far away from even a construction ready project on the Rohit lands. And I think it's gonna take quite a bit longer than we're estimating to get all these approvals and go to detailed design and get an approved detailed design. And there are a lot of other projects that are shovel ready now that are a lot farther ahead of this. So my concern is I'm worried about utilizing staff's time to do this when we don't really know the extent of this COVID thing yet, and possibly not having these resources available. And I'm also kind of worried that for Kevin, that you're kind of setting yourself up to failure, that you're going to get a shovel-ready project approved in 4 to 6 months, because I really don't see it happening. So for those reasons, I don't think I'll be supporting it.
Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. And I certainly echo Councillor Watkins' concerns. At this point, I think I'll vote in favor of the motion, but I'm not saying anything about what's going to happen at the next stage of the game. We don't know. We don't even know what we don't know right now. We have no idea how long this is going to last. We have no idea what the consequences are going to be financially. We don't know what other tax increases are going to be ensuing from other levels of government or from ourselves to handle this situation. And if we were to say we'll put money towards this, it will be at expenses of other projects already approved. So otherwise, we're looking at a further tax increase, which, depending on what's going on with the economy and how fast the recovery happens, may not be palatable to our residents either, regardless of the intentions. So I'm willing to have the discussion to see what it entails, but I think it's premature to start saying we should be putting all of our forces or energy or finances towards this project when we have larger issues at hand right now to deal with than whether or not we take advantage of a rec facility and potentially get funding for it. So in fact, I might even talk myself out of voting in favor of it right now. I am so concerned about what we're dealing with right now for the crisis, as opposed to saying we may have an opportunity to deal with this. But even if we did, it would involve additional tax increases with, unemployment rates that are at record levels in the province. It's just difficult to try to come to terms to say that we can do this. And I also just share Councillor Watkins' concerns about, whether or not we can even achieve the goal of having it considered shovel ready in time for when the grants were to come forward. So we're at step 1, and we have to be at step 5 or 6 or 10 to be even in the docket. And the staff resources I'm looking at right now are so stretched just trying to handle the current situation. And I wanted to recognize how well our staff have been functioning so far, unlike under really stressful situations and tight timelines, to be able to do just turnarounds that we have never had to do before. And I'm not sure if this is the top priority that we need to be worrying about right now, is to handle this. Ideally, Councillor Bradhead, this would have been brought forward in a few weeks from now when we have a better idea of when the end game is going to be. So if I do vote in favor of it, or regardless of this does pass, I'm going to ask administration to, perhaps it says April 6th or as soon as possible, and to perhaps take that as soon as possible level and kind of come into this later into the process where we have a better idea of what we're actually handling as far as this monster goes, and not try to fast track it so quickly at the expense of potentially other issues that may be more important as they come forward. That's it.
Is there anyone else wanting to get into debate? Go ahead. Yep.
Sorry, I have to ask the mayor to mute. It's not pleasant. I'm like, initially I was all over this too, because I thought here was a great opportunity. I mean, we just heard a lot about the ability to make sure we are ready to start our recovery and look for opportunities that is actually going to build our local economy, but also the region, and provide construction opportunities or potentially work. But certainly, when we look back at what the whole purpose of what the backgrounder is that we're having this initial discussion on, the recommendations 1 and 2, and the purpose was basically due to the unprecedented nature of what we're dealing with now. Administration has come forward with some recommendations around deferring projects in an effort to manage, albeit existing cash flows. I'm cautious that we're asking administration to take on a lot of work in a time when our resources are stretched very thin, and for potentially no return on that work. So, and I realize that we're not asking for any money right now, other than a commitment on staff time. They're going to come back April 6th. So I'm not going to go and rehash some of the debate that Councillor Watkins and other councillors have brought forward, because certainly I'm tossed up in the air in relation to this, and it's not because I don't think we should be ready, and it's just whether or not we can be, and the impact that we're having on staff at this particular time, when I think we're in, like the report said, we're in unprecedented times. So I'm back and forth, and I realize that we have part of my questioning before debate was around what are other opportunities, and I think that we already have existing opportunities that are there and that our administration is more than ready to go forward with. So I'm worried that we're just piling on and without knowing, and maybe I'm worrying unnecessarily at this particular time, because we don't know what we don't know in relation to what's coming back with us at April 6th, and we may be still in the middle of what we're doing here right now. So I'm going to wait for closing, because that'll be whether I go one way or the other.
All right, seeing no one else wanting to go into debate, I'll just, oh, sorry, did I forget you, Councillor Jolly? Go ahead.
That's okay. Just really quickly, I'm supporting this motion for all the reasons mentioned by Councillor Broadhead and Hanson. But I also want to say that I have every confidence in Mr. Scoble in terms of prioritizing the health of his staff and making sure that he's letting us know if we're putting too much on their plate. When he tells us that, yes, this is something they can do, this is a timeline that they can handle, I trust that is accurate. And I look forward to seeing those numbers next month to give us a better idea of what we're looking at, and opportunities that really may even be announced in the next few weeks, so we can get an idea of what kind of priorities which we should be having over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Wes, I'm going to be supporting your motion. I think my watching the news broadcasts of the Premier, and he's actually doing one in 2 minutes, we're going to miss it. BC just announced a $5 billion stimulus package. And then I came in a bit late, but I participated in a town hall meeting with all the mayors across Alberta on Friday, and with Minister Madu, and he said the same thing. Municipalities will get help in the way of stimulus money for projects. And so I think this is this motion prioritizes one project, which I believe is a good one to work on, because it does talk about the economic development of our not just the recreation lands, but Lakeview Business District. And I asked Mr. Scoble right off the bat, do you guys have the capacity to do this in the next 2 weeks? His answer was a yes. I think we need to remember that everyone's working from home, and with the pause on many things, some of our staff are needing to do something at home. So if Mr. Scoble, just like Councillor Jolly said, has the capacity in his staff to just really give us a high level indication of what this would look like on April 6th, I think we need to send the message not only to ourselves, but to the public and to the province that we're still willing to contribute to the recovery of this province, and that will be through hiring engineers to do design work. So I'm going to support this. Wes, anything to close?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the one thing I can say is it may be tough work to get this all done. It may be tough to get the approvals. It may be tough to do all of that. But the one thing that you can kill it right now and nothing will happen. And we won't have this project available, and it won't be available. So we can sit back and say, no, we don't want to do this, and we'll just turn and go away. But I think we've got an opportunity with a little bit of effort here to advance something that's important to our community. And yeah, we can get scared and say no, or we can be brave and say, let's see if we can get this done. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Call for the vote. So that's Councillor Mackay, Mayor Herron, Councillor Broadhead, Councillor Jolly, Councillor Hughes, and Councillor Hanson in favor. Councillor Watkins, I assume you're against? Okay, thank you. All right, so 6-1 vote. And that was the end of capital projects. We're on to 3.5 additional funds requested to address the impacts. Mr. Scoville, do you have much to add that was beyond the backgrounder?
Sorry. Yeah, I guess I can just elaborate a little bit. So this is really just an ask for $400,000 for contingency and contingency only. We feel we will stay within the $1 million already allocated, but it is a fluid and dynamic situation. And, you know, even since the council meeting on March 13th there's been numerous new guidelines and directions from different levels of government, and those continue to come every day. Right now we're at about $250,000 expenditure 10 days in, so that's a burn rate of about 25 grand a day. However, we think it's actually around 35 to 40 because, as I mentioned, we'll have a more detailed report next week. We've got most of the costs captured, but there's still some stuff we're tracking down from the onset of the I guess the response to this. Things like some of the initial expenditures and that. But we do continue to see some incremental costs come along as well. For example, it was mentioned earlier in the meeting that we're keeping our public washrooms open. And so to do so requires enhanced cleaning to Alberta health standards. So we are undertaking that. So that's a new incremental cost coming in. So, you know, we are projecting coming in on April 6th at 700,000 to 800,000, but we still have to build in some of the reimbursements in that as well. I don't believe that's in yet. So we're projecting that 700,000 to 800,000 at this point. This is just in case requirements from other levels of government continue to escalate in the coming time up till April 6th. Again, there's been numerous discussions of potential direction or legislation coming from different levels of government, which could result in increased cost to the municipality to enable those directions from other levels of government.
Any questions of Mr. Scoville? Seeing a bunch of shaking heads. Can I have someone make a motion then? Go ahead. Oh, Councillor Hanson wants to do it this time.
Thank you. That for so long as spread of the COVID-19 virus continues to be classified by Alberta Health Services as a major public health risk, the CAO be authorized to spend up to an additional $400,000 over and above the 1 million approved by council at the March 13th, I think that's supposed to be 2020 special council meeting, drawn from the stabilization reserve or from the risk management operating reserve, where the expenditure falls within the criteria for utilizing the reserve for the purpose of meeting any payment obligations that may arise from measures taken to mitigate the risks posed by COVID-19, including without limitation and costs associated with postponement or cancellation of previously scheduled public events and any costs associated with securing the services of one or more professional medical practitioner to assist the city in determining when it is appropriate for an employee who has taken time off work due to an infection or risk of infection to resume their employment duties.
Aren't you glad you picked a very long motion? Before I accept that, I'm going to look over at Mr. Lafleur. Just give me a thumbs up if you caught that error in the year. Okay, he did. So it is 2020 and that will be fixed. All right, so anything further on that, Councillor Hanson?
No, I think it's just a really, I think it's great that Kevin is asking for this. We got to do what we can.
All right.
It's a fluid situation. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Mr. Scoble, like, the way you've handled this so far has been extremely professional, and it has been calming, I think, for many people in the community. You've been looking at everything very rationally. You have taken the staff and really worked well to make sure that this system is as seamless as possible as we try to handle this crisis. And the staff have really stepped up to the challenge. And I want just to acknowledge the amount of work that's been involved here. Like, you guys are going 7 days a week. We're seeing things come in all hours of the day. And there has not been like one word of complaint, one word of any, like, slow down in spite of the stress of staff and on yourself. And in spite of not only have to work, but also have to work from home to handle all these situations. I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that's been done to date on this. And if I honestly think if you need $400,000 as a contingency, it's going to cost what it costs. We've never handled this before, but the way that you and your staff have handled this and led the situation is really needs to be noted. So thank you for that.
Anyone else? All right, anything to close, Councillor Hanson? All right, call for the vote. That's unanimous. All right, there's a quick amendment to a motion that was passed at our special council meeting, whenever that was, last week, to just extend powers to 8 p.m. on April 6th instead of midnight. Councillor Mackay, question? Okay, is there any presentation on this, Mr. Scoble?
No, there's not.
Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Sorry, I just had to ask her to mute again. That's no power. That previous approved council motion AR 20-091 be amended to read as follows: that commencing immediately and until 8 p.m. April 6, 2020, unless further extended by council, the CEO be delegated the authority and the responsibility to A, decide what programs, services, events, and operations within the control or oversight of the city should be canceled, postponed, or modified in any way due to the risk posed by the COVID-19 virus, and B, take such actions as may be required to execute on those decisions. And that on April 6, 2020, the CEO will report to council on the decisions made pursuant to this delegation, and council will at that time review the status of this delegation. Nothing to open it. You've already explained the reasons. No. Councillor Hughes. You're in mute.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute when I called for the vote, but I see that's unanimous hands. Okay. All right, unanimous. Okay. Then the last thing is how we're going to deal with our taxes going forward. And I see Greg has been hanging around this whole meeting. Do you have a quick presentation?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy, and members of council. I'll give you a quick overview. So, of course, as part of the discussion today is property tax relief measures that we feel are pertinent in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Broadly, there is two main levers that we can enact that will help provide relief. The first one, as articulated in the AR, is that we have tax penalty dates coming up that apply to properties that are already in tax arrears. We have an April 1st penalty and a July 1st penalty date. So we're proposing to council that those be canceled. In addition, we still are on schedule to mail out our combined assessment and tax notices to about 28,000 tax accounts, which will occur at the end of May, as it does every year. And in a normal year, we would have a tax due date 30 days later of June the 30th. So what we're finding is that we want to be suggestive of extending or deferring the date in which we will ask our citizens to pay their property taxes. We would like to extend this date to September 30th. So that will allow from the date that we mail notices to the date that they have to pay their taxes, instead of being 30 days, will now be 120 days. In saying that, that alleviates us from having to charge a penalty on overdue taxes for current year taxes on July the 1st and also on August the 1st. And all those dates I mentioned would be contained within the property tax penalty bylaw that was brought to you in December of 2019, where we made some changes to our rates and dates. And in order to do these items, what we need, our legal staff was so great in being able to draft up a bylaw, which you will need to give 3 readings to if you're approving these recommendations. So bylaw 17-2020 has been prepared for you today, which is called the 2020 Tax Penalty Special Provisions Bylaw. And that's a bylaw to provide the tax penalty relief in 2020, as I've just spoken about. So that's the broad overview. And of course, you might have questions, so please fire away with those.
Okay, I've got Ray set, but I got one quick question. Quite often in agenda reports, there's financial implications. So if you can maybe, Mr. Dolan, speak on past monies gathered by the penalties, like what kind of revenue are we losing with this?
Sure. So historically, whenever we charge penalties on overdue taxes, that is a form of revenue to the city. And as such, it is included in our annual operating budget. So at present, rounding to the nearest $100,000, tax penalties would be revenue in the form of about $900,000 to approaching $1 million a year. So in order to make these types of moves today in terms of providing tax relief, there would be an operating revenue consequence. We've tried to do some analysis on that. I'm estimating that to provide what I had just spoken about is roughly in the neighborhood of about $600,000 to $650,000 in property tax revenue that we would forego.
Okay, so I don't see anyone from finance online, but so Mr. Scoble, we're going to have to adjust our mill rate then by about $600,000. Is that correct? Because it's already built into as revenue. I'm not saying I want the revenue from tax arrears. I don't, but I just want to figure out how this is going to adjust our tax rate.
So
okay.
If I could, Kathy, I'll take the question and certainly Kevin can fill in, but because penalty tax revenue is a separate line item within the budget, it's not to be confused with the general tax receivables. So the tax receivables and the resulting tax rates that we set would essentially be unaffected. This is just more acknowledging that the revenues from a different source, which is penalties, will be reduced in 2020.
Yeah, I still think that's probably built into the budget and we'll have to adjust. Right, Mr. Scoble?
I believe so, but we can bring that back either in a slot memo or at the next council meeting.
Or when we do our mill rates, we'll have to do some adjustments on a lot of things, I'm sure.
Well, we'll provide some clarification in advance of that.
Okay. All right, Councillor Watkins, you were up first.
Yeah, sorry, just a question. Did you say the cost of implementing the program was $650,000 maximum?
So sorry to reiterate that comment. So in the penalty dates that we would be canceling via this proposed bylaw, our estimates of that would be about $600,000 to $650,000 in revenue.
And that estimate is based on past, what has happened in the past?
Correct. For the most part, yes. So, the wild card in 2020 would be trying to build in a factor to, based on the amount of folks that would potentially not be in the position to pay. But best estimates at this point in time would be that 600 to 650 mark.
I think it's the least we could do, and I'd be ready to move the motion anytime, Madam Mayor.
Excellent. I just make sure we got all the questions. I see Councillor Hughes is next, and then go to you, Mackay.
Thank you. Just a quick question. There's the opportunity to use the stabilization fund again for this because it is a one-time issue. Wouldn't that be possible without having to actually change the mill rate? I'm seeing nothing from Mayor Herron, but I'm just, Mr. Scoble or Greg, would that be, it would be possible. We could also, instead of increasing the mill rate, use a stabilization fund to address this, right?
I believe so, but I don't know. Greg, are you able to answer that or?
Yeah, I was hoping to defer that one to you, Mr. My assumption as I sit here is yes. I think it's a year of anomalies. So I would think that in short order, we could look into that.
So we'll take that as a takeaway and come back to council with more information on that.
I appreciate that. We have to figure out how to also make it affordable for everybody here under stressful situations. So even a tax increase of 600,000, I think will be challenging for some people. Thank you.
All right, Councillor McCarthy.
What have we heard back from the province in relation to some help from the province, and as it relates to property taxes, education tax levies, any other relief that we could possibly anticipate, or are they even talking about it? Do we have that information, Greg?
Yeah, we've heard some rumblings from the province. I've had some dialogue with some of the other urban city assessors in the province wanting to know as quickly as possible what the province is offering or suggesting. I think there's been a bit of a delay in their announcement. I know that today, as we speak, being Monday, they were holding a feedback session with the larger munis. This would be Alberta Municipal Affairs with, I believe, Edmonton and Calgary. Wanting to gather feedback on how the province should roll out and specifically, sorry, I should have said specific to the education tax levy. I think the broad intent is that the province is wanting to be able to say that we will defer the collection of the education tax component as well. The trouble is we don't have the fine strokes of what their plan is as of yet, but I'm hoping that administratively it's something that dovetails nicely into what we're trying to do here today, where by telling our citizenry that we're going to defer the collection and penalties of taxes, I'm hoping that the province is really just saying that we agree in principle with the things that munis are doing and that they're kind of on with it. So in saying that, it's kind of a partial answer. I'm hoping that within probably another 7 days, there'll be more information and we know more fully what that part of the tax relief will be.
I appreciate that. I'm just trying to see if I was trying to remember if I had heard anything or if we were getting any direction from the other level of government. Do you know off the top of your head, how many of our residents actually pay monthly?
I do know that it's about 60%.
So 60% actually take advantage of that. So, I mean, potentially there's still that. We won't know by deferring the payment deadline to September 30th. We're just guessing as to how many people are going to actually take advantage of that whole deadline.
Yeah, that part it'll be an unusual year to see how it all falls out. But to talk on that very quickly, if, for instance, our 60% of all property accounts that are on the PAT continue to follow suit, then they would make 12 monthly payments without penalty right up to the end of the year, and there potentially would be no change for those folks. We are receiving calls already of some people who are in financial distress or hardship that are wanting to pull themselves off of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So then this is where this bylaw revision today will help, is that some of those folks then, instead of immediately going into some type of penalty situation, they'll be able to hopefully get their affairs in order by later in the year and then get back on track per se with their tax account by the end of September. So end of Q3.
So this, by approving this bylaw, we'll help those, well, we'll enable some residents who were taking advantage of the monthly payments to actually then pull out of that program?
I think it helps that group, and most certainly it helps the other 40% who are the ones that to pay all in one shot per se prior to June the 30. And now this gives them another 90 days past that date to be able to get the money in order to pay off their tax account by September 30. So definitely very good news for those on the 40%. And then for the 60%, really that's more individualistic, where if they're having trouble, we might see a little bit of slippage in that PAT percent down to 55 or maybe 50. Only time will tell that type of number, but it does provide a source of relief for that group as well.
What about businesses? What do we anticipate there?
Businesses, so when I give the statistic of 60%, that's all property types wrapped into one.
Mm-hmm.
So for businesses, it would be same. You know, I'm taking calls from some businesses prefer to be on the monthly. They no different than the res scenario. They would be able to pull themselves off and make partial payments or no payments, but then would have to work later in the year to get back on track. So it's the same logic really for both types, just different, you know, of course, magnitudes of taxes being owed.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, just to confirm that the deferral of the education property tax that may or may not come from the province, that's just for the non-res, is that correct?
We've been hearing that, but I know that, again, speaking with municipal counterparts, there may be a bit of a lobby effort or waiting to hear from the province to see the rationalization for just that. So I think I'm still holding my breath as to whether it will just be non-res or whether it will be both groups.
Okay. All right, well, I guess we'll just have to message that because there's going to be some of that ever ongoing confusion about municipal property taxes versus education property taxes. And if we're deferring our municipal and the business are getting their municipal plus their education deferred, there's still the potential that residents will not get their education deferred, and we're going to have to collect that on their, so we're going to have to communicate this out super clearly.
Yeah, for sure. And like Brenda had expressed earlier today, you know, utilities, some challenges there with wanting to get very clear communications out. So we'll work with the communication staff, of course, to try to message this as clearly as possible and via the different venues. And you know, on this, like you say, with us, when we're extending these deadlines for payment to September 30th, we're not saying municipal only, we're saying that's all taxes. So we're saying we're going to give you till September 30th to pay your entire tax bill without penalty, because when we apply penalties, it's not just on the municipal portion, it's on all portions.
Okay, so that leads to another question. If the province only defers the non-res education, we're going to get a requisition for the residential education at some point coming forward that we will not have collected.
To get into that part of the discussion, I mean, it does get more complicated in that when we pay our education requisition to the province, we pay it in quarterly installments. So, you know, just about every municipality is going to be putting through a tax relief package very similar to ours. Edmonton has already done theirs. And so this relief of penalties, you know, is never intended to be just for the municipal portion. It's for all portions. But yeah, there'll be some discussion on, you know, when and how we're having to pay our installments to the province. And maybe we find out that the deferral just means that the province says that the quarterly payments that munis pay to the province will be delayed, giving us more time to let those folks pay us and then us pay the province. So that's why at this point in time, hopefully in about another week, I'll get a lot more on that end of it.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Lafleur, we're passing a bylaw potentially in a few minutes that is only effective for this current tax year. Do we need to repeal it at some point in the future, or does it just expire and disappear?
Yes, Your Worship, it's not necessary to repeal it. It's the legal term is it's spent. Its effectiveness is spent at the end of this year. It doesn't have to be effectively repealed at all. You can just let it do its thing and let it kind of die on the vine.
Okay, excellent. Looking for a hand to, Councillor Watkins, you ready to make this motion?
I'll move that bylaw 17-2020 and the 2020 tax relief special provisions bylaw be read a first time.
All right, I'll accept that. Any opening comments?
No, Madam Mayor, I just think that, well, I guess I do have a couple. I guess that, property and home ownership are, something that are fundamental to Canadians, and a basis on which a lot of Canadians get equity in their selves. And it's a treasure, and many Canadians aspire to home ownership. And, during these difficult times, this is really the least we can do as a municipality to provide people some kind of tax relief. And as I know myself, I own properties in 3 different municipalities, and I don't pay on the installment plan. I pay once a year. And I was wondering how I was going to possibly make all these payments next month, in the next couple of months. So, and I think that the Stabilization Reserve Fund is something that is perfectly utilized for something like this, is an unusual circumstance. And we also have to look at all the other relief that's provided by other lenders and other people who are owed money. RioCan, the largest real estate REIT in the country, just announced that they're going to defer retailers' rents. So I think this is the least we can do. So I ask you to support it.
Excellent. All right, Councillor Jolly.
Thank you. As was mentioned earlier, this is the type of bylaw that's happening across the province. We're not outliers. I'd be shocked if this wasn't unanimous. Certainly, this is something that we've been talking about over the last week as relief that is needed for our residents. I think it's important to note too, though, that it's certainly important for businesses who own property. It's important for residents who own property, but I hope that it's also a signal to those who own property and who are charging rent that, we're all in this together, and help out the people that that are in your community by doing what you can. This relief will hopefully provide that opportunity for those renting their properties to provide relief kind of down the line to their renters. So I hope this helps out people who need this temporary relief.
Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on debate? All right, I'll just close with thank yous to everyone to get this bylaw in front of us as quickly. I think Councillor Jolly is right. It's probably going to be unanimous, and the fact that it's going to be happening across the province is fantastic. I do have a huge pit in my stomach of fear of people deferring utilities and deferring their property taxes and then getting hit with very big bills, this fall. So I'm going to encourage people to pay what you can, sign up for the monthly billing if you haven't yet. That might actually help you more than deferring. Paying 1/12 now helps with the city's cash flow. I worry about the 6 months from now conversation. So, Councillor Watkins to close.
Yes, Madam Mayor, like I was just said
Oh,
that.
sorry, hold on, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Hanson wants to weigh in, and then I'll let you close. I didn't see her.
No, not to worry. Keep going.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Councillor Watkins to close.
Okay, once again, I just wanted to reiterate that, home ownership and property ownership is something that's fundamental to many Canadians and that we treasure and aspire to. And this is about the least we can do to help them with the deferral of these taxes. And I want to thank Greg and his staff for the quick and appropriate response to coming up with this bylaw because it's much needed. And this time of help, when we can all band together to help each other. Thank you.
Call for the vote. That looks like it's unanimous, except for Councillor Hanson. Is she frozen? I think that's why she had her hand up earlier, was to vote. Are you texting her? She's gone. Give us a sec, guys, because I want to.
Yeah, I'm in favor, she says.
Is that okay, David?
Well, technically, Councillor Hanson appears to have left the meeting, but you.
She's trying to dial back in.
Okay, it's probably better we wait and give her a chance.
Okay.
I'm sure she wants to vote.
We're waiting. There she's coming. I can see her.
I'm being told by our technical person that Councillor Hanson has had some problems here with her internet connection.
There she is.
There she is.
Counselor Hanson, put your hand up. Okay, she's in favor.
All right.
Okay, that's unanimous. That is the end of our agenda for today. Mr. Scoble, anything to add before I adjourn?
I
Excuse
don't think
me,
so.
you do have to give some additional readings to the bylaw.
Yeah.
I'm watching this live thing of Kenny and I'm like, I gotta join this, but okay. That's first reading. Counselor Watkins, I'm going back to you for second reading.
Okay, hang on.
Sorry, guys.
That bylaw 17/2020 be read a second time?
Anything further?
No.
Call for the vote. It's unanimous. Can I have a member of council make, Councilor Mackay, go ahead.
That unanimous consent be given for third reading of bylaw 17/2020.
Thank you. Call for the vote. That's unanimous. We can go back to Councilor Watkins now for third reading.
That bylaw 17/2020 be read a third and final time?
Excellent. Call for the vote. That is unanimous. All right, is there anything further, Mr. Scoble?
I don't have anything, Your Worship.
Kathy, really good job.
This is kind of fun. Councilor Watkins, you had something further?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I just want to thank Kevin and all his staff for all the work they've done. And I also want to thank all those first responders out there, all our fire and police who can't take a day off. They really can't self-isolate because they're required to do all this work, and our frontline medical people. Thank you.
Speaking of that, Mr. Scoble, did we get any word if a childcare center is opening up in St. Albert to deal with some of the?
I have not heard that yet, but we have our daily sit rep meeting at usually around 4 or 4:30. I'll ask it there.
Okay, thanks. All right, anything further? Anyone? Councilor Jolly, go ahead.
I'll just echo what Councillor Watkins said, and also, Councillor Mackay and Mayor Herron and I have been sitting in on our emergency management committee meetings, and staff have just been knocking out of the park in terms of keeping us up to date on providing fantastic recommendations, great information. So again, thank you to your teams for just being fabulous this last while.
Yes, I think everyone's working full tilt and probably gonna get tired. So Mr. Scoble, will you make sure that we don't have burnout within our staff because we need them all. I know they're rotating out. So I think that's it. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. So thanks guys for joining, and we will see you on April 6th.
Stay healthy. Peace.
Yep.